Hey everyone, Guide to Genshin here with a guide on everyone's favourite emo boy, Xiao. Xiao is a main DPS unit that was first released in February 2021 and is currently having his third banner. In this video I will go over his talents, how to play him, best artifact sets and stats, best weapons, some team suggestions and more, so let's get into it. Firstly, let's go over his talents. His first talent, Whirlwind Thrust, is a simple normal attack talent that is similar to any other polearm user. His normal attack performs 6 quick strikes, and his charge attack launches smaller enemies into the air, stunning them. His plunge attack allows him to plunge from mid-air and deal AoE damage. There's nothing that special about his normal attack, the only thing that's worth mentioning is that Xiao will not take damage from performing plunging attacks, no matter how high you plunge from. This is very useful for exploration and getting down to lower ground quickly. Now let's move on to his elemental skill, Lemniscatic Wind Cycling. This ability is fairly straightforward. It begins with 2 charges and using it allows Xiao to dash forward and deal anemo damage. Finally, the main part of Xiao's kit, which is his elemental burst, Bane of All Evil. This allows Xiao to don his Yaksha mask and gives him a multitude of effects. Firstly, it will greatly increase Xiao's jumping ability, it will increase his attack AoE and attack damage, and convert all attack damage into anemo damage, which cannot be overridden. However, this also causes him to continuously lose HP. His burst also has a high energy cost, as seen here, meaning you will need to solve some energy problems to play him well. His first passive allows him to do more damage when in his burst state, with the damage increasing more the longer you stay in his burst state. His second passive increases the damage of his E when used consecutively, and his final passive decreases climbing stamina for him and his teammates. So what does this all mean? I'll go into more depth in the teams and playstyles section, but typically you will use his elemental skill to gain energy for his burst, and then constantly perform plunging attacks inside his burst for maximum AoE damage. For talent upgrade priorities, as well as other aspects of this build, it is important to note that the damage that Xiao does in his burst counts as plunging attack damage, not burst damage. This means that leveling up his normal attack should be a priority. However, you shouldn't neglect his burst either, as leveling up his burst will increase this damage bonus here, as well as decreasing the life drain. Both his burst and normal attack should be leveled up fairly evenly. His skill is definitely worth leveling up if you have the resources, but shouldn't be prioritized over the other 2 talents. Now let's get into his constellations. As this is his third banner, I know many of you will be considering pulling for his constellations. I want to first of all state that he is an amazing character without any constellations, and no constellations are required to play him well, but some of them do give good quality of life upgrades. His first constellation simply gives his elemental skill an extra charge. This not only gives a little bit more damage, but also helps a lot with his energy problems, as the extra charge generates more particles for him. I would definitely recommend this if you are a Xiao main and want him to be as strong as possible. His second constellation increases energy recharge when he is not on the field. This isn't a great constellation as he should be on field most of the time anyway, and the 25% energy recharge that you gain is not worth your primo gems. His third constellation increases his skill damage by 3, which isn't that useful as most of his damage comes from his burst. His fourth constellation gives him a defense bonus when his HP falls below 50%. This is virtually useless in all scenarios. His fifth constellation upgrades his burst level by 3. This is helpful and will allow him to do more damage, but definitely isn't needed and isn't worth getting primo gems for 5 other constellations. His sixth constellation is a massive damage boost. It allows him to use his skill within his burst while ignoring the cooldown of the skill when he hits at least 2 opponents with his plunging attack. This gives him a huge damage bonus and is definitely worth getting if you have the primo gems. To recap, I would recommend either not pulling for any constellations at all, pulling for C1, or pulling all the way to C6. None of the constellations in between C1 and C6 are good enough to warrant pulling for just those ones. Now onto the weapons. Firstly, his best weapon is obviously his signature weapon, the Primordial Jade-Winged Spear. The passive was made for him, and the crit stat along with the high base attack allows him to achieve good stats easily. If you have this weapon, use it on Xiao. His next best weapon is the Staff of Homer. This actually sometimes beats Jadewing's Spear, as it has a huge crit damage stat, and the passive works well with Xiao, assuming you can keep him under 50% HP. If you have this weapon and aren't currently using it on anyone else, then it is a great option for Xiao. Other 5-star weapon options include the Vortex Vanquisher and the Calamity Queller. These both boost Xiao's attack stat by a lot and can be great on him. If you're using Vortex though, you should try to use Xiao with a shielder such as Zhongli to get the most out of the weapon. For 4-star options, Deathmatch is the best choice, followed closely by Blackcliff Polearm. These both boost his crit stats and can boost his attack with their passives. The Lithic Spear is also a good option, especially if you are running Xiao with other characters from Liyue. If you have none of the options above, then running options such as Favonius Lance, Skyward Spine, or Prototype Star Glitter are your best options, but they are significantly worse than the previous ones. Now let's move on to the artifact section. With the Chasms release in 2.6, a new artifact set called Vermilion Hereafter was released. This has since become Xiao's new best in slot artifact set. Its 2-piece bonus gives 18% attack, and the 4-piece bonus gives more attack when the character loses HP. This pairs perfectly with the HP draining mechanic of Xiao's burst, so if you haven't farmed any artifacts for Xiao, then it's best to farm this artifact set. However, his previous best artifact set, 2-piece Gladiators or another attack bonus set such as Shimenawa and 2-piece Viridescent Venera, is still a very good option. If you already have some good artifacts with this set, I would recommend sticking with this rather than farming for a whole new set. You only get a small amount of damage increase going for 4-piece Vermilion over 2-piece Gladiators and 2-piece Viridescent, so it was recommended to go for either what you have already farmed or whatever you have the best stats on. For main stats, you want attack percent on the Sands, anemo damage on the Goblet, and crit damage or crit rate on the Circlet depending on your crit needs. For substats, you want to fulfill your energy recharge needs, and then also get a good amount of crit rate, crit damage, and attack. Your energy needs will differ depending on the team you're running him in. Assuming you run him with another animo character as a battery, then aiming for around 120% should be fine. You can run more or even less than that depending on the characters in your team and what weapons they are using. For crit, you should try to get around a 1-to-2 ratio, with your crit rate being over 70% to ensure his plunge attacks and his bursts crit often. Now onto the team section. Due to Xiao's energy problems, you should usually be running him with an animo battery. Jean is the best pick here if you have her, as she not only provides energy for Xiao, but also provides healing. Sucrose can also work extremely well here, especially if she is C1 and uses sacrificial fragments. Sayu can also work in this slot, but is recommended only as a last resort. You can also use Kazuha or Venti, but they are much better used in other teams. Using Raiden Shogun as a battery is also an option. For specific team comps, Xiao's most popular and as strongest team comp is Xiao, Jean, Zhongli, and Albedo, also known as the Xiao Double Geo comp. This is an extremely expensive comp due to being all 5-star units, but there are some modifications that you can make. You can swap out Jean for Sayu, who also generates energy for Xiao and heals. You could also use Sucrose in this spot, but this is only recommended if you can survive without any healing. Albedo here is used as a Geo sub DPS, purely for extra damage as well as Geo Resonance. So while Albedo is definitely the best pick here, you could also use Ningguang as a burst DPS or even Geo Traveler. The other main Xiao team actually has no set characters apart from Xiao himself. For this team, you simply want Xiao, a battery for him, a shielder and/or healer, and a sub DPS. I've already covered the battery options previously, so any of those work here. For a shielder and a healer, someone such as Bennett, Zhongli, Diona, or even Chi-Chi would do well. For the sub DPS, Fischl is a popular choice, but you could use anyone that deals off-field damage, such as Xingqiu as well. Note that if you are using Jean, she fulfills both the battery slot and the healer slot, so you can then use 2 sub DPSs as well. Xiao has many flexible team options, and apart from the Xiao Double Geo comp, he doesn't have many set team comps that you need to follow. Simply make sure he has someone who can generate particles for him, and someone with either healing or a shield to keep him alive, and then you can make many different team options for him. Before we get into the main showcase, I wanted to point out a couple general tips for Xiao and his playstyle to allow you to get the most out of his damage. Firstly, you should use his 2 skill charges before his burst so that you can gather the particles from them. His skill does not generate any particles if you use it within his burst state, so using it beforehand and then immediately casting his burst will allow you to generate particles and catch them, helping his energy problems a lot. The second tip is that you can get more energy out of his burst by performing an auto attack in between each plunge attack. If you time it right, you will not lose any damage from doing plunge attacks, and you can squeeze out a little extra damage, and this can be especially helpful if you are using a support that requires auto attacks like Shinto. The final tip I'd like to talk about is low plunge damage versus high plunge damage. As you can see here in his talents, there are 2 different multipliers for low and high plunge damage, with the high plunge damage being higher. You want to ensure that you are always performing high plunges rather than low plunges in his burst to get the most damage. Now, here is a showcase of my Xiao. It is by no means a perfect build, but I find it works perfectly well. Here, I am running a Refinement 2 a Deathmatch, 2-piece Viridescent and 2-piece Gladiators. He is Constellation 0, and his talents are 10, 10, 10, so he is triple crowned. Here are his artifact stats. Pause if you want to get a better look at them. The team that I am using is Xiao, Jean, Zhongli, and Bennett. I will show their builds at the end if you want to see those. Now here is a video showcase by Ignatakaos on YouTube. I will link his YouTube channel down below. Thank you so much for helping out with this video, and as you can see their Xiao is a lot better than mine. So here is a showcase of what in-game Xiao can look like. Thank you all so much for watching this Xiao guide. Comment your opinions on him down below and I will try to answer any questions that I can. If you like this video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up for more content, and I will see you all in my next video.